For nearly 1,000 years, Europe believed Hungary was just another European nation, another kingdom, another language, another people. They were wrong. Because hidden beneath modern Hungary was a genetic signature unlike almost anywhere in Europe, a signature connected to horse warriors from the eastern steppes, to migrations no empire could stop, to tribes that appeared suddenly and changed an entire continent. For centuries, historians argued about where Hungarians truly came from: Europe, Asia, somewhere in between. Then DNA researchers began comparing ancient skeletons with modern populations. What they found shocked everyone, and the deeper they looked, the stranger Hungary became. So what really happened? The answer will change how you see Europe forever. Hungary sits in the center of Europe, surrounded by nations with Indo-European languages: Germany, Slovakia, Romania, Croatia, Austria. But Hungary speaks a language completely different from its neighbors. Hungarian does not sound Germanic or Slavic or Latin. It sounds isolated, ancient, almost foreign. For centuries, scholars tried to explain it. Some believed Hungarians descended from local Europeans, who slowly changed over time. Others believed they arrived from deep in Asia, but no one could fully prove either theory. Then something strange appeared in genetic studies: small traces of Eastern ancestry, not massive, not dominant, but undeniable, and those traces did not match nearby Europeans. This is where the story gets strange, because the deeper scientists looked into Hungarian DNA, the more ancient migrations began appearing. Navigations connected to forgotten horse tribes, steppe warriors, nomadic empires, and one terrifying expansion across Europe over 1,000 years ago, an expansion so violent, medieval Europe compared it to the end of the world. But then something changed. The official story started breaking apart because the people who entered Hungary around the 9th century were not exactly what historians expected. Some graves showed Asian ancestry, others looked almost entirely European. Some carried Eastern weapons, others carried local European artifacts. It did not make sense. Who were these people really? Invaders? Migrants? Or a mixture of countless tribes moving across Eurasia for centuries? Please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and that question has never been fully answered. The year was 895 AD. Europe was collapsing into chaos, kingdoms fought constantly, borders shifted overnight, and across the eastern horizon, something was moving. Fast-mounted warriors appeared near the Carpathian Basin, riding small but powerful horses, carrying curved weapons, moving with terrifying speed. These were the Magyars, or at least that was the name Europe gave them. Chroniclers described them like ghosts, appearing suddenly, burning villages, vanishing into the plains before armies could respond. Some accounts called them demons, others called them descendants of the Huns. No one truly understood where they came from, but fear spread quickly. Within decades, Magyar raids reached deep into Europe: Germany, France, northern Italy. Entire regions panicked at rumors of approaching horsemen. But behind the raids, another mystery remained hidden, because these warriors carried a language unlike anything around them. A language linked not to Europe, but to peoples living far east near the Ural Mountains, thousands of kilometers away. How did such a language arrive in the heart of Europe? Historians searched for answers for centuries. Some believed the Magyars migrated west slowly over generations. Others believed they were pushed by larger nomadic empires behind them, the Pechenegs, the Khazars, possibly even forces connected to ancient Turkic expansions. But records were fragmented, incomplete, sometimes contradictory. The deeper historians looked, the darker the mystery became. Then archaeologists uncovered something unexpected: ancient graves across Hungary, horse burials, Eastern-style weapons, decorative belts unlike European designs, and skulls with mixed physical traits. Some looked East Asian, Others looked fully European. The graves told a strange story, not of one people, but many, a moving alliance crossing Eurasia together. What they found shocked everyone. Because early Magyar cemeteries revealed enormous diversity, these were not isolated tribes. They were connected to multiple populations, steppe nomads, Uralic-speaking groups, European locals. Turkic influences, everything overlapping together. And that complicated everything historians thought they knew. The old theory imagined a clean migration, one people entering Europe, one identity. One origin. Reality looked messier, much messier. And then DNA science arrived. Suddenly, scientists no longer relied only on medieval texts. Now they could compare ancient skeletons directly with living populations, and the first clues appeared quickly. Researchers studying ancient Magyar graves found genetic markers linked to Central Asia and Siberia, not dominant in modern Hungarians, but still present, tiny echoes of a distant past. The discovery stunned researchers because Hungary sits deep inside Europe, yet parts of its ancestry pointed eastward, very far eastward. But then something changed. Further studies complicated the picture again. Modern Hungarians were genetically much closer to neighboring Europeans than expected, closer to Slovaks, Croats, Romanians. Austrians, the ancient Eastern signature existed, but only partially remained. This created a new mystery. What happened to the original Magyars? Were they absorbed into larger European populations over centuries? Did only a ruling elite arrive originally? Or were medieval accounts exaggerating the scale of migration? No one agreed. And every new study created more questions. One burial site especially disturbed researchers, Karos, a cemetery connected to elite Magyar warriors. The graves contained rich artifacts, weapons, horse equipment, jewelry, evidence of power, but the DNA inside those graves revealed extraordinary diversity. Some individuals showed Eastern Eurasian ancestry, others carried Western Eurasian genetics. It was not a single bloodline, it looked more like a coalition, a tribal confederation formed across massive distances. This is where the story gets strange, because the Magyar identity may never have been purely genetic, it may have been political, cultural, military, an alliance of different peoples united under one movement. That possibility changed everything, because it meant the founders of Hungary were not one tribe isolated from Europe, they were already mixed long before arriving. And that raised another disturbing question. How many other European nations began the same way? The deeper scientists explored ancient DNA across Europe. The clearer one truth became: human history was never clean, never isolated, never pure. Entire populations moved constantly, merged constantly, changed constantly, but Hungary still stood apart. Its language survived, its identity survived, even after centuries surrounded by different cultures. Empires tried to absorb Hungary repeatedly. The Mongols invaded. The Ottomans conquered large regions. The Habsburg Empire ruled for centuries. Wars devastated the land again and again. Yet somehow, the Hungarian language remained alive. That alone puzzled linguists. Most migrant languages disappear over time, especially when surrounded by larger language families. But Hungarian endured. Why? Some experts believe strong early state formation preserved it. Others believe isolation within the Carpathian Basin helped maintain identity. But even today, no complete answer exists. And then came the biggest revelation of all. Ancient DNA comparisons between conquering Magyar elites and populations near the Ural region revealed striking similarities, not perfect matches, but undeniable links. The connection historians searched for suddenly became real. The journey from the east was not myth. It happened, at least partially, but the story was still incomplete. Because another discovery complicated everything again. Many common Hungarians carried very little of that Eastern ancestry, meaning the conquering groups may have been relatively small. a warrior elite ruling over larger local populations. If true, modern Hungary may descend from both ancient European locals and Eastern steppe migrants simultaneously, two histories merging into one nation. No one expected what came next. Researchers began studying burial customs instead of genetics alone, and they found signs of rapid cultural blending. Eastern steppe traditions mixed with European Christian practices, pagan symbols appeared beside crosses. Nomadic traditions slowly transformed into medieval European society. Hungary was not frozen between East and West, it was becoming both. And that may explain why Hungarian identity feels so unique even today, not fully Eastern, not fully Western, something in between. A bridge between worlds, but there was one final mystery, one question researchers still could not answer. Why did the Magyar language survive when so much else changed? Because genetically, Hungary became increasingly European over centuries. Culturally, Christianity reshaped the kingdom. Politically, it integrated into Europe, yet the language remained untouched, almost defiant. Everything pointed toward gradual assimilation, one clean explanation, one simple answer. But there was one thing historians could never fully explain. Why this language survived when countless others vanished forever. And that question, for centuries, Hungary European by geography, but different in language. Different in origin, different in memory. Part 1 revealed the first layer of the mystery. The Magyars were real, their migrations were real, and traces of Eastern ancestry still survive inside Hungary today. But the deeper scientists looked, the less simple the story became, because Hungary was never built from one bloodline. It was built from movement, from migration, from collision. And now, the investigation was about to go deeper, far deeper. The breakthrough began with ancient DNA, not modern samples, ancient bones, ancient graves, ancient warriors buried over 1,000 years ago. Researchers extracted genetic material from elite Magyar cemeteries across Hungary, Karos, Keneslohárda, sites connected to the earliest conquerors, and the results shocked everyone. Some individuals carried ancestry linked to populations near the Ural Mountains, others showed strong Central Asian connections. A few even carried markers associated with ancient Siberian groups, but then something changed. Other graves showed almost entirely European ancestry. The contradiction confused researchers. How could one conquering population appear so genetically mixed? The answer may lie in the nature of steppe empires themselves, because the Eurasian steppe was never stable. For thousands of years, tribes merged constantly, Turkic groups, Uralic groups, Iranian-speaking nomads, Mongolic tribes, all moving across open grasslands, stretching thousands of kilometers, all fighting, trading, intermarrying. Absorbing one another, indigeneity on the steppe was fluid. A tribe could change languages within generations. A defeated people could become part of another confederation almost overnight. This is where the story gets strange. The Magyars may not have been one ethnic group at all. They may have been an alliance, a mobile federation formed during centuries of migration. That would explain the genetic diversity, the mixed artifacts, the conflicting physical appearances in ancient graves, and it would explain something even stranger. Why Hungarian culture contains influences from multiple worlds simultaneously. European traditions, steppe traditions, Uralic linguistic roots, Turkic cultural elements, everything layered together. Like fragments of forgotten migrations frozen in time, researchers studying Hungarian vocabulary discovered ancient Turkic loanwords buried deep inside the language, words connected to horses, warfare. Politics, nomadic life, evidence of long contact with Turkic peoples before entering Europe, but Hungarian grammar remained fundamentally Uralic, meaning the language survived even while absorbing outside influences. That survival was almost impossible. Most migrant languages disappear within centuries. especially when surrounded by dominant neighbors. Yet Hungarian endured against enormous pressure: German influence, Slavic influence, Latin influence, Ottoman rule, Habsburg rule, world wars. Still, the language survived. Why? Some historians believe the answer begins with Saint Stephen, the first king of Hungary. Around the year 1000 AD, Stephen transformed the Magyar tribes into a Christian kingdom. He centralized power, built churches, creed laws, established royal authority. Hungary became part of medieval Europe, but something crucial happened during that transformation. The kingdom adopted Christianity without abandoning its language. That decision changed history forever. Elsewhere in Europe, conquered peoples often lost their native tongues. But Hungary developed a powerful state while keeping its linguistic identity intact. The result was unusual: a European kingdom speaking a non-Indo-European language. An island of difference in the middle of the continent. And that difference survived for over 1,000 years, but then something even stranger emerged from genetic research. Modern Hungarians are not especially genetically distant from neighboring Europeans. In fact, most are extremely similar, meaning the ancient Eastern ancestry became diluted over centuries. Wars, intermarriage, population collapse, migration, all reshaped the population repeatedly. The Mongol invasion alone devastated Hungary in the 1200s. Entire regions emptied, then repopulated. Later came Ottoman wars, Habsburg migrations, modern industrial movement. The genetic landscape changed again and again, yet the cultural identity survived. This challenged older ideas about ethnicity completely, because Hungary proved something historians long resisted admitting. Language and genetics are not the same thing. A people can preserve identity, even while their DNA changes dramatically over time. That realization transformed historical research across Europe, because suddenly, ancient migrations looked very different. The old model imagined stable populations, pure ancestries, fossils identities. Reality was chaos, movement, blending constant reinvention. And Hungary became one of the clearest examples of that process. But the biggest revelation came from comparisons with ancient steppe populations. Scientists began comparing Magyar-era DNA with ancient remains from Central Asia and the Ural region. One connection appeared repeatedly: the Kushnarenkovo culture, an archaeological culture located east of the Urals. Some genetic signatures matched surprisingly well, not perfectly, but enough to suggest ancestral links. What they found shocked everyone, because medieval Hungarian chronicles had long claimed Eastern origins. For centuries, many historians dismissed those stories as myth, exaggeration, political propaganda. But now, fragments of those legends suddenly aligned with science. The Eastern connection was real, at least partially, and that changed everything. Because it meant oral traditions preserved memories across centuries of migration, memories of lands thousands of kilometers away. Imagine that for a moment: a people crosses Eurasia, fights wars, builds kingdoms, loses old customs, mixes with countless populations, yet somehow remembers where they came from. That memory survived long enough for modern genetics to partially confirm it. No one expected what came next. Researchers studying ancient graves noticed another pattern. Elite burials often carried more Eastern ancestry than common graves. This suggested a ruling class phenomenon, possibly a smaller conquering elite governing larger local populations. The same pattern appears repeatedly in history: small mobile warrior groups dominating massive territories: the Mongols, the Normans, the Manchus, and perhaps the early Magyars as well. If true, modern Hungary may descend mostly from earlier European populations culturally transformed by a smaller Eastern elite. But the story still refused to simplify, because other evidence contradicted that theory. Some non-elite graves also carried Eastern ancestry, meaning migration may have involved broader communities too. Families, children, Entire tribal groups, Agan the evidence split in multiple directions, Agan the mystery deepened. And that question has never been fully answered. How large was the original Magyar migration really? Historians still debate it today. Some estimate only tens of thousands arrived. Others believe the movement was far larger. But one thing became undeniable. Hungary was shaped by both migration and assimilation simultaneously, East and West merging together over centuries, not replacing one another. That blending created something unique inside Europe, and perhaps something deeply human, because every nation tells stories about stable origins, clean beginnings, civil ancestry, but ancient DNA destroyed that illusion almost everywhere. Europe itself was built from repeated migrations, hunter-gatherers, early farmers from Anatolia, steppe pastoralists from the east. Wave after wave after wave, no population remained untouched. Hungary simply preserved the evidence more visibly than most. Its language acted like a fossil, a surviving clue from ancient Eurasian movements, a living reminder that Europe was never isolated, never static. Never pure, and once scientists realized that, the implications became enormous. Suddenly historians began re-examining other European populations, other mysterious languages, other isolated cultures. The entire map of ancient Europe started changing. But beyond the science, there was something deeply emotional hidden inside this story. Because identity is powerful, people want simple origins. Simple answers. But human history rarely works that way. The ancestors of modern Hungarians were likely many things at once. Steppe riders, European settlers, nomads, farmers, warriors, migrants. Survivors, their story crossed continents. And their descendants still carry fragments of that journey today, not as pure bloodlines, not as untouched ancestry, but as echoes, cultural echoes. Linguistic echoes, genetic echoes, tiny surviving pieces of forgotten worlds. And maybe that is what makes Hungary feel so unusual inside Europe, not because it is separate from Europe, but because its history reveals how connected Europe always was to everywhere else, to Asia, to the steppes, to migration stretching across entire continents. This was never a story about isolation. It was a story about movement, about survival, about adaptation, and about memory, because somehow, against impossible odds, one language survived, one identity survived. Even while everything around it changed, that alone makes Hungary extraordinary. But there is still one final mystery, one question buried beneath all the genetics, all the archaeology, all the migrations. What did the original Magyars actually call themselves before Europe knew them? Because many ancient names disappear forever, tribes vanish into history, empires collapse into dust. And sometimes only fragments remain, a weapon, a grave, a word, a strand of DNA. The steppe empires ended, the migrations ended, the old tribal confederations disappeared long ago. But their echoes did not. They still survive in language, in memory, in ancient graves beneath Hungarian soil, and somewhere tonight, in a museum drawer, or beneath an untouched burial mound, or hidden inside DNA not yet tested, the final piece of the story may still be waiting. We just haven't found it yet.